There we go. I think it's class 11. Just days keep going. So the main chapter I know that I studied for was this models and model binding. Hopefully you guys did think that this, again, maybe not the behind the scenes, but being able to implement what they said in the textbook was kind of easy this time. It wasn't a lot of information like it has been in the past. I'll go over some examples. So there was not a lot of vocabulary that I really pulled out of this. It brought up that model view controller again. I will talk about this a little bit more because I copied and pasted the questions that somebody posted, and they were talking about, what the difference between maybe the model and the controller. And I want to explain that a little bit differently here in a little bit. But again, in generic terms, your model is just your data structure. Your view is how the users interact with it and actually see it on the screen. And the controller is like that messaging hub between the two. When somebody does something on the view, the controller handles that action to then get the data from the model to then display it back on the view. So it's kind of like the go-between. It does bring up this thing called the unique identifier. Again, some of the information or vocabulary, I don't think they always bring up the way that I would bring it up or when I would. This is super important when we start talking about databases, which we will be talking about very, very soon. So in a database, every single entry in a database has to have a unique attribute of some sort. And the easiest way to do that is having it be this unique identifier. So I think we call it a GUID, a GUID, a global unique identifier or ID. But there's also UUID, which is like universal unique ID. So if you hear GUID or UUID, they mean the same thing. And there are multiple ways to create those. We created those just by setting it as one and then incrementing it by one each time. So that's how we did it. Your database, like MySQL, does that for you. So anytime it puts a new entry in, you can say, hey, make the ID just be the next one. And it'll do that for you. And then if you're not using MySQL, if you're using some kind of like document DB or MongoDB, oftentimes there's a UUID generator that people use, and it just throws unique things in there. And because there are so many different possibilities, it very rarely can actually like overlap. I guess technically it can, but the statistics behind it are so small that it just creates a unique one every single time. And then you can also check to make sure that there's not one already in your database that has that. So unique identifiers. Your data layer. So this is also another one for me that's kind of hard to identify exactly what they want out of this. I know how they implemented this with the coding events, and we'll talk about that data layer. But once you get a MySQL database, this becomes like your repository layer. And so I'll talk about that also here just a little bit on how Spring handles those layers. But the key thing that is new that you guys do need to kind of figure out is this model binding. And it isn't anything else besides binding. Whenever you hear that you are binding information, that means that you're just taking it from somewhere over here and tightly coupling it. Like you're saying this maps to this, this maps to this, and you're just mapping every single thing and binding it together. And that's it. Don't overthink that. It's literally just, oh, I have this model over here. Oh, now I'm going to make sure that it fits this model over here. And now they connect. They're the same thing. So don't overthink that. But they do, I forgot to put it in there, but the @model attribute, which I'll show later, is how they kind of bind the whole entire model rather than binding the individual attributes. These are the Q&A questions that I pulled out. Some of these are getting really good, so keep posting them every single time. I want to see more. Somebody was talking about TDD, test-driven development. My 2 cents on it is if you do true TDD, true test-driven development, you are not doing things the way that we are. So even though we are talking about it, it's because some businesses like saying they use TDD, and some actually do, but the majority of them do not. They do use tests though. So for you guys to get used to just writing tests, I think that it's important that you get used to it. But again, if we're looking at that like level of understanding, your level of understanding with tests should be that you can read them and have a basic understanding of what they're doing. But I'm not going to let my entry-level developers write the tests. I'm just not without like peer programming. Like if I'm going to have you write it, I'm going to be either right there next to you as you write it, or I'm going to say, hey, go write this, and then schedule a meeting with you later so that we actually go over that test and we work through that together after you've written it. I am not going to allow an entry-level person to write a test and then just keep pushing it. Like, it's never going to happen. So do not worry about, in my opinion, do not worry too much about the test as much as passing this course. Because to be honest, this boot camp actually has more actual test implementation than whenever I went and got a bachelor's degree in computer science. So that's another reason why I'm not super strong in it, because in the real world, I just do what I need to do to get things done. And I've never had to write a test before actually writing code. I sometimes write them together, but I don't write my test before I write my code. Second question, can you explain reason for declaring fields and interfaces rather than classes? So this was back to that question of when we say map, but we set it to equal a new hash map. Well, map and hash map are two different things. And so I worded this the way that I wanted to because we have to draw out some vocabulary. Map is an interface. You can't like actually create a map. You can create types of maps like hash maps, tree maps, linked hash maps. There's several different types of maps that you can create, but the map is just an interface. It's a blueprint of a blueprint, right? Now, and then your class, well, actually your hash map, I think, is technically an interface as well, maybe, but no, so it's more of your class level. So the reason why, and this won't make a lot of sense because I can't actually like give you applications for it. If I program it as the higher level blueprint, then whenever I'm interacting with it, I can interact with hash maps and tree maps in the same code because both of them are a type of map. So if I say, hey, I want to mess with maps generically, I can write code for maps generically. And if I throw in a hash map, it'll work it. If I throw in a tree map, it'll work it. It doesn't matter what kind of map I throw in, it still will work. So the interface, especially for mapping and for lists, are often because you may not know what type of map or you may not know what type of list, but you want to put another thing in a map. Well, it doesn't matter if it's a hash map or a tree map. When you say that object.put, the way you put objects in a hash map is actually different than how you put it in a tree map. So under the covers. But you don't care how it works under the covers. You just care that it works. So it's an abstracted layer. And so generically, you will define them as interfaces. Now, I have done both. So I've written code, especially with the hash map and map. I have written code both ways. I've written it as a map and I've written it as a hash map. But the reason I could get away with the hash map is because we as a team decided we are not going to use any other maps besides hash maps, so it doesn't matter. So if you guys follow just one type of map, then it doesn't matter. Otherwise, you can always assign it as a map. And remember when we did like the cat thing, we might have to, I don't know if it'd be worth our time, but if you remember when we had a house cat and we declared it as a cat, all the house cat properties still were there. Like under the covers, it was still a house cat, even though we said it was a cat. So remember that under the covers, it still knows what it really is. It's just, I can now deal with a house cat and a tiger in the same code. So just a different way of thinking about it. Again, though, as an entry-level programmer, that's where your senior people, your mentors are going to come behind your code and tell you those things. So you're just going to code it to make it work. That is, if you learn anything out of this, you just make things work. Your senior level, your architects will review your code and will tell you, oh, we on this team or at this company, we do it this way. And they will train you on those things. But they don't want to have to stand over your shoulder just to get things to work. They need you to get those things to work. So, can you go more in depth on model binding? I will do a little bit more here in a second that I think will, IntelliJ will start throwing some things, and or the error that you saw with the constructors. If you have more than one constructor, it cannot do it. I will try to touch on those a little bit more in the code as I add that model attribute. So hopefully I'll answer that more in a little bit. What is the difference between import options? Hopefully this one also comes up, but I doubt it will, because I rarely bring in something that has two different libraries that it could bring it in from. But the question here is, when I bring in, let's say, a user object, well, I could have created my own custom user. Spring Security already has a model of a user. You know, you could bring in another library that already has a model of a user. So there could be 3 different user models that you could bring into your class, into your program. And IntelliJ will tell you whenever you say user, and then you do like the Alt-Enter, or you right-click and it says bring in the imports, it'll say, hey, which of these imports do you really want to look at? Which of these imports do you want to bring in? Because we found multiple types of users. Each of those have their own attributes. Each of those have their own methods. So you do have to choose the right import. I think, help somebody on Monday that accidentally chose the wrong import on something, and then none of the code was working. It was the model import. They chose a model that was not the Spring Boot model. It was some other model that was available to them. It might have been the Gradle one. And so when you have multiple options, you do need to know which one you're trying to import. General rule for us, if it has anything to do with controllers, then you're using Spring. If you have anything to do with, later on we'll do like repository things, anything that we're doing with web development, we're going to use Spring. Anything that's just core Java, like array list, you do not have, you can code, you don't have to be working on a web development application to code an array list. So an array list is going to come from a Java library. So the Java utilities or something like that. So yes, don't always click as fast as you can on the imports, kind of read which one. And if you have any questions, if one of those comes up, please take a screenshot of the different ones and then post it to me or post it on the homework help so that other people can see those different imports. And I can bring up better examples in class. And then I am going to talk about the model versus controller. So when you deal with how to architect code, there are, I don't know, a dozen different ways that you can architect code. And every single one of your, and it's a thought process, it is not a rule, meaning you don't have to strictly follow it. It's more of a guiding principle to get you to understand and break down what needs to happen to get your code to work. So if I'm creating a project, one way I can take this project, no matter what it is, let's say it's making a pet website application that can store all my pets in my house. One way that I can think about it is, okay, when I code, I want to code the view. So how do I want this to look? I can view, well, what objects do I need? I need like pets. I need a house. I need an owner. I need something, right? Like I'm thinking about the data and how it's being constructed. And then I'm also thinking about how am I going to view and display and edit that data. And then the thing in between is the controller that controls the data flow between everything. That is one way to think about it, but it's not the only way to think about it. The other hard part for you guys just don't have enough experience yet is many of the systems I deal with, you have front end and you have back end. And we are merging all of that stuff together in some of our stuff right now. So everything that's time-leaf, I would not write in time-leaf in the real world. I'd write that in React or Angular. And so in React and Angular, you still keep that MVC. So front-end development does do a lot more with MVC. And then your controller actually calls your backend to get the data. So what I'm going to show you next on this next slide is more or less more of the backend than the front end. I stole this. The website's on the bottom here. If you really want to look it up, I just grabbed it randomly. It was one of the first ones I saw. But these are Spring, what they call Spring beans. So we've already done like the controller. They also have an service, which is a service layer. They have an model. They also have an repository. All of these are annotations built into Spring. And we will talk about the repository layer and this JPA in the next couple weeks. So we will see how all of this kind of works. Now, this is with bigger applications. With our smaller applications, we do not need a service layer. The service layer is that configuration and data manipulation. So we could have a service layer, but we don't have to. On a big application, I absolutely need a service layer because I might be manipulating and not just going to one model, but I might be trying to tie two models together and getting half the information from one thing, half of it from another. And whatever that business logic is that I need is going to go in my service layer. It is not going to go in my controller. My controller methods are going to stay small. And the only thing that they're going to do is handle requests and responses back. That's all. They're not going to handle any business logic. They're going to say, is the request coming in valid? Does it have an ID? Does it have a user? Does it have a whatever you're requiring for it? It's going to check for all of those things and to validate that the request is still a good request. If it is a good request on a bigger application, that's when it's going to call your service layer to actually manipulate the data. You're not going to manipulate it in the controller layer if your application's big enough. And then your service layer is going to do its magic. It's going to grab some information. It's going to go, do whatever it needs to. And then it's going to send that data back up to the controller and say, this should be fully formatted for you. And the controller could just make extra checks right before it sends it out to make sure that the data is valid. Is it in the right structure that it needs to be? Is it, when it ships out, going to be understandable to whoever asked for it? So the controller layer is only doing request and response. The service layer is all of your business logic. But what we are doing in a small application is we are combining those two. So hopefully that is making more sense with this data layer. Your model should be just your model. It's not going to control much. It's just your structure. But your service layer, which I think is what they're kind of calling the data layer. Their data layer, because we don't have a repository, their data layer is the service layer and the repository layer kind of pushed together. Again, you can code it however you want to. That's the hard part about going into software engineering is every team you go to is going to do it slightly different. These are just the generic rules for Spring, because Spring gives you actual annotations to help you connect all this stuff together, which we will be learning here in the next couple weeks. So hopefully that helps a little bit. That's still, Grade assignment 2, remember, you should be pretty much having this done because the next thing I'm going to talk about is grade assignment 3. So the 3 things that I want to hit on, first of all, was the assignment. The reason why I'm hitting on it right now is because it's the least prioritized. Remember, you're going to forget some of the stuff I say now by the time I finish lecturing. So I always try to put the most relevant stuff at the end. This is just a jump start. Whenever you go to assignment 3, I will make this a little bit bigger. When you go to assignment 3, just like the other stuff, Your first task is just getting to know the starter code. You should run the starter code. So that's what I did here. I think I have it. Tech jobs. You don't need to see my text. Well, you will here in a second, so I'll make it bigger. Hold on. Again, right now, you don't need to see this. I'm just going to hit the play button to make it play. And we're going to see what it does. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of kind of how to think about it, how to approach it to be the most efficient at it. But other than that, I'm not going to go into this too much. So it says it started. So then I go back here and I go localhost 8080. And here, I didn't do anything. This is by default what should be running whenever you download your code. When you go to search, this stuff comes up. Whenever I try to search anything, though, it hasn't been written yet. That's fine. But you can search by different things. None of those have been written. So the search is your main thing that you got to do, logic-wise. It's not the only thing. But then your list. So this is a list of every single position type offered. And so let's say that I wanted to be a mobile developer and I wanted to view jobs by mobile developer. When I click this, it does. I know that's too small to see what it says up at the top, but you guys can see that this has some parameters in it. It got a little longer. And then it says this, but it doesn't give me any mobile developers. So I think that's actually the first task for you to do, is to make this print out the mobile developers here. The logic's already there. You got to do the view for it. The other cool thing that I really like about this one, it's kind of hidden right here, but right above, like I haven't even clicked on task 1 yet, but right here it says a demo app. You definitely want to look at this demo app. This demo app, as you can see, looks exactly like mine, except it actually works. So whenever I click the list and I click mobile developer, it actually gives me mobile development jobs that it has preloaded into it. So the biggest hint I can give you, the tests want these to look identical to this. How do I get it to look like that? I go to inspect. And it gives me all of the HTML code that makes it look how it's supposed to look. Now, you cannot just copy and paste this, but this is absolutely the structure that you need. So you have a table body. You have a table rows. And remember, these are going to get iterated over. So you're going to have like a for each thing that shows each of these. So if you're wondering to know how to get these to look like they need to, right click and you can see what this is. And it actually says to-dos. So that's the biggest help I can give you right now. Make sure you play with the code. Try to get at least one of these things to pop up, if not all of them. And I think you have the knowledge to do it, especially if you go back through the textbook and search for like the if part and then the each part, th:"each. I think we can actually search right here, right? Each. Yeah. So if you want to see what these look like, iterating in a template. So you got examples right here in the textbook. You literally are going to copy and paste these and just make them do and say what you want. If you try to reinvent the wheel on HTML, you're spending too much time in HTML. Everybody's done this before. You just copy and paste and edit it however you need to. So use the search button, search here to help you figure out where to go. And fine. Last thing, what was it? There was one other thing. Oh, the demo app. Oh, in the code. In the code, and the book does tell you this, so don't think this is anything super powerful. If you actually go down to the bottom you can actually see this to-do tab. If you click the to-do tab, this is where you're going to put your code at. There are 4 to-dos. So to-do 1 is this one. So you're just going to open this thing up. And it's going to tell you, use a loop to display job results in the table. So you're going to do your for each loop. So then the other question is, how do I know what variables they're passing into me? Remember with templates, we have to call the template by name in our controller. So if you do a Control-Shift-F, so you're going to find in all files, Control-Shift-F, and I just say list jobs, there's that return statement of this template. So if this is my template, my HTML, if I search for that exact HTML file and go to the return, they have already put in your model the attribute called jobs. So this is the variable that you're going to want to use in this template. So just work backwards sometimes. I think this one's actually good for, like, this one's right. I don't think you're going to touch this. You're just going to go to the list jobs. So list jobs. So if you want to go to files, you can do, if you do Control-N, you can look for different types of things. So you can actually go to files. I use this feature quite a bit because remember, the code I work in is like thousands of files. So I hate searching around for it. So I do Control-N, and then I search, and then I can find my actual file. All right. I think that's all I need to show you for right now. Again, you're not supposed to just get it done in a couple of days. If you're working at pace, you will at least have started this by Monday. Even if you didn't get the to-do 1 done by Monday, as long as you had like an idea of what to do and kind of structured it out, I think that'd be a good starting point by Monday. Looking at the code, starting this, and then by next Thursday, actually having at least this one done. All right. I'm going to exit out of this. Okay, so a question that was asked, Control-Shift-F, this searches inside each file. So it says find in the files. So Control-Shift-F is what you're going to use most of the time. But let's say on these controllers, so I have this search controller and it says return search. Now, hopefully most of you know, just go to your resources, go to your templates, and here's your search HTML. So this search right here matches with this search HTML. But let's say these templates, I had 25 or 50 templates in here, and I did not want to have to search through all of them. What I do is I use the Control-N, and then I can go to files, and now I can see all the files that have search in it. And it's the files, it's not what's in them, it's just the name, the title of the file. Again, I wouldn't use this all the time, but TimeLeaf does not allow you to do your control click here. That's why I was bringing it up, because usually I love doing control clicks, and I can't do it there. So I'm trying to find another way. All right. Again, don't stress about assignment 3. Just really look at the demo app, see how it works, download your starter code, start looking at it, get it to run on your machine, and then start thinking about how you would do the template, the for each over every job. And even if to be honest, just get it to work first, even if it looks ugly. Just get it to work, loops over the things. Yeah. Okay. I think that's what that. Okay. Next thing. I want to go over what they taught this week, and The exercise. I'm so used to asking like in a class, how many of you got this exercise done? But it's very hard to do in this type of virtual environment. So because I really do kind of want to know like percentage wise how many people got this done. But I'm going to do this in front of you, but I'm going to go really, really fast because the expectation again is that you got this done, even if you didn't understand it. But we'll look at that. So when I look at their starter code, I think, or the code that you should have had done. Yeah, ignore this for a second. I just want to make sure I'm on the right delete events. Yep. So this is kind of where they left off. My home controller just gives me my index. My index is just the fragments and says coding events. But the main thing that we did was we did a create and a delete. And here's where I want to briefly talk about CRUD. I don't think we've actually brought up CRUD in here before. So let's make it super big. We're going to use this as a notepad for a second. CRUD operations. You'll. Oh man, that looks so ugly. But CRUD. Why is the U? All right. CRUD. This means create, read, update, and delete. So whenever you do any type of application and you're trying to interact with data, these are the things that you want to know about. Because some applications, you never want to create anything. For instance, our assignment 3 that I just showed you, you're not creating new jobs. You're not creating that at all. So all you're doing is you're reading them. That's actually the whole entire thing. That's all you're doing out of these 4 things in assignment 3 is reading. You're not creating, you're not updating, you're not deleting. We will be doing, I think, some of that in assignment 4. To be honest, I haven't looked at it. But these things are hard to do without a database. So now that we're going to, in the next week, really talk about databases, now we can actually start doing this more often. And this will just come second nature now. But the create, read, update, delete, before this lesson, we already did the create. The read was the first one because we're reading data. And then we did the delete, but we have not done the update yet. So that's what I'm going to focus on right now. But if you hear me talk about CRUD operations, it's not something that you think about all the time. It's something whenever you're trying to access data or really on new projects, you're thinking about, do I want to do all of these 4 or do I want to do just some of those 4? So, okay, let me zoom just a little bit back out. I think that's probably fine. Actually, I'm going to go this. There we go. So again, we have the create get, which displays the form. That's why there's this model add attribute, because it displays the form, where the post mapping actually adds the data into the event data. The delete get mapping shows how to delete it. I'm actually going to change this because I don't like how they do this. I think it looks bad and it's not very effective, but that's my opinion. So I'm going to show you how to do this differently. That's not in the book. And then here's your post mapping of the delete, which because of how I'm going to do it, I'm actually going to have to redo this one. And then again, the display all events is your read. Even though we don't call it out as a read, this is your read when you display all events. So again, let's level set. I'm going to start this. I'm going to go to localhost 8080. Coding events. If I hit all events, there's no events there. If I create an event, you're going to get the short version today with, I don't even know what language I'd even think that this is, but you're going to get some random things in there. And then when I want to delete the event, I can maybe click that and hit delete. So that's how they want you to delete events. Not very visual, and I'm not a visual, like I'm not very good at CSS, so I'm sorry that I won't be able to help you out too much with that. I'd have to Google it, but it does read, create, delete. So let's update. So I'm actually going to use their guidance so that it goes right along there. We're going to create two things. We're going to do these two edits. The first one is going to be just displaying the form, and I'm just going to put it clear down at the bottom here. Where's my in parentheses? Did I delete? Oh, there it is. So here is going to display the edit form, and then this one's going to be processing the edit form. So there's my two things. I'm going to mimic this as above, where I'm going to do the @get mapping, and this is going to be edit. Now, I can't say edit. This is why I don't like the delete one either, because the delete one, you say delete, and then it lists all of them again when I already have it in a list, and then I have to delete, I have to click a check to delete it. Where the edit, it just wants you on the screen to be able to edit. And so we actually need to pass some kind of value into the edit. And because it's a get mapping, we cannot do the response variable, because response variables are with post methods. Again, did I expect you guys to remember that off the top of your head? No. But me talking about it, it should be like you've heard it before. So get mappings, you have to do path variables because you can only put it at the end. There's not a response. There's not like a JSON object that you are sending with your get. You can only send things with post or patch or other ones, but you can't do it with get. So then what I want to do here, I think they called it event ID. I'm fine with that, so I'm going to leave it as that. Yep, that's what they called it right here. I had to import that because it wasn't imported already. And then this one's going to be my post mapping. With the post mapping, though, I'm just going to do it based on the edit. Because my post will actually post the event. So the things coming in from the form are going to be these things. So these are going to actually be like response parameters, all of them. So I'm going to send in the event ID, the new name, and the new description. Right. Oh, I did it right. There we go. Add the necessary annotations. We did that. I talked about the post. So now I need to create an edit HTML in the view. So I'm going to go over here. It does tell you just to, oh, I did. Sometimes I move really, really fast. So here's what I did. I clicked on the create one because that's the one I want to edit, or that's the one I want to mimic. I hit Control C, and then I hit Control V. So everybody knows those shortcuts. Control C and Control V. And then it says, hey, I know you don't want to create another create. What do you really want to name it? And I'm going to say edit. I'm going to add it to my repository there. So this is identical to the create. I just did it here. So right here it says event name. It says event description. I still want those things, so I think those are fine. You want to update the text of the submit button to reflect the edit functionality. That might be good. Instead of creating, I'm going to say edit. Round out the controller, use this to get the thing. Okay, I'm going to ignore that for a second because here's what I'm going to do. Logically, if I made the edit identical to the create, what I want to do is I want to go up here to the create, the get one. And do you see how this create, it adds an attribute for title, and then it returns the events /create. I'm just going to mimic that down here. My title is probably going to be like edit event. And then I do need to pass in the actual event. So I'm going to say something like model.add attribute event. And then I'm going to probably say event data dot get event by ID, event ID. I'm going to zoom this out just one little. Yeah. I'm also going to close this. So what I've decided is I need to send in a title because everything has a title. If you look here, it says title. All of them have title. And then the event is the thing I'm trying to edit. So if I go back here, I need to somehow use that. Here's what I'm going to do. I don't think I'm going to, hold on. There's something else I want to do. Put the event object in with that. So this is what they have. And I guess I'm going to copy and paste this for a second and show you what's different than mine. Here's the event. So I'm going to place it right underneath here. I did not want to paste all of that. So this is the same thing. Instead of just sending in the event data.get by ID event straight into the event, this made an event first and then sent it in. That's the only difference between these two lines and my one line. They also made the title a lot longer. Instead of it saying event, edit event, it said edit event, and it actually gave the name and it gave the ID. So it's up to you what you want it to look like. Since theirs does a little bit more than mine, I guess I'm going to take theirs. It makes the event, sends in the event. It's for the title, it says edit event, but it actually gives the name and ID. So that might be better. Within the form fields in the edit, get the name and description of the event that was passed in. To set them as values of the form fields. So we don't have that. So this would be name, but we need values. That would be event. Did I just call it event, right? Event dot name. And this would be description. Oh. Right here. Why is there red? Oh, because I haven't done the post mapping thing here. I'm gonna do a return here, just so that it doesn't make it red anymore. All right. I also need to add this action. Do we even have an action up here? Form is post. I'm going to be, because our edit has an event ID, whenever I try to post, it's going to try to post to the exact URL that I was at, and I cannot post to the exact URL because I don't want the event ID on the post. That's why we have to go ahead and do this thing here and actually add the action. If you don't put where the action should go, it'll do the post on the exact URL that the template's on at the time. I don't want that ID, so I got to do that. The other thing it tells me is we never use this event ID, but we need it. So we're just going to make it right inside this form. It's going to be hidden, meaning we're not going to actually allow the user to type anything in. The value of it's going to be the event.id. And that reminds me, I should probably do that on these as well. Yeah. Because I don't want the text of that, I want the actual value of that. Okay, anything else? In the process edit form, query the event data for the event being given in, update the thing, redirect the user to events. And it gives me my code here. So the event and the return, everything inside. I guess that's why I didn't hear a lot of people complain about this, is because this is the hardest code. They just give it to you. Copy and paste. To access the event, the user will need an edit option. So in the resources, events index, add a link. They give you the link as well. So I just go to not that index. Index. I'm just going to put an extra table header in here so that it opens up another thing. And then I'm going to do this. All right, I think I've done all the stuff they asked, and let's see what I broke. I'm going to rerun this. All right, so I have this event, and now I have this edit button. When I hit the edit, that's not right. So I'm going to have to fix that. I'm going to put this as numbers to see if it actually edits it. And then it blanks it out. So something's wrong there. They didn't do it says ID of 1. What did I know I did something wrong. I just can't remember off the top of my head. It's name and description, the TH tag, you're right. There we go. Good call. Create event, edit. All right, now it pops them in there. But it doesn't save it right. This is what we need to do now. We need to go into the edit part right here, and we need to hit a breakpoint. I need to see what's coming on here. Well, actually, it's not going to be we'll see. I know what it's going to be. We'll see what it is. Good guess in there. I'm going to set a breakpoint and rerun it as debugger. And we're going to actually use this debugging tool that is this amazing tool that IntelliJ has. Come on, computer. Catch up. There we go. Create an event. I'm going to hit the edit. I didn't edit it, but we'll see what's going on here. So whenever I went in here, if I look, the first thing I want to know is it says my event ID is 1. That one came in. That one came in. But this one, it says null. My name never came in. These things are super picky. If I say that this variable name is name and I'm using time leave, that means that my name right here has to be name. So I can either make, it doesn't matter which way I go. I can either make this, I can either make the controller have event name and event description, or I can go the other way and change this to name and description. I'm going to go ahead and change this to name and description. But again, I could have went the other way and made this controller. I could have said this be event name. Actually, because that doesn't matter. I'm going to rerun this debugger and see if that works better. Was there something else that I wanted to? Oh, no. All right. Rerun this. Because it has to start the debugger, it does take a little bit longer. Kind of set up. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to edit it. Okay, there we go. I set my breakpoint. Now let's see if everything comes in. So my event ID is 1. My name is, yep, there's my numbers. And my description is now numbers. So I think everything should be good, but I'm cautious. I'm going to go line by line. Did it grab the event? You see the event to edit is the old one, the letters. And it's going to set the event name to this and the description of that. And now my event to edit now has the numbers in it. And now it's changed here. So if I remove this breakpoint and I just add and edit, then it edits it. All right. Couple things I want to change to this. I was going to do my pet thing. I don't think I'll have enough time to add these things into my pet project. But I want to do some more things here. For instance, the delete events drives me nuts. I deleted the event and it works. Couple things I do want to do a call out. Do you see how I don't have an ID of 1? That is very, very typical in a database. Once I increment to the next number, if anything gets removed, I don't go back and see, oh, is there some number before this that might work? I don't do that. I just keep incrementing every single time. That's normal for a database, but that's also decided right here. Every single time I make a new event, it goes to the next ID every single time. It never goes backwards. So you do kind of need to know that I can create as many events as I want to, and if I delete one, that ID never gets used again. What else? The other thing is the delete. I don't want the delete events up here. I like how this edit works. This edit looks nice. Why don't I put a delete option over here as well? So let's do that. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to turn this off. In my event controller, I'm going to say, I'll go find my delete. This delete, I don't need that anymore. And to be honest, this one I really don't need anymore either, except that I want to copy and paste the header of it. And I'm going to redirect. So this is my old one. That's why I commented out. So my new delete is just going to be a button. And that button, I just want one event ID. I don't want all of them. Required. No, I want it to be required. Event ID. I think I'm fine with this. But then the method that actually deletes it is this thing right here. I could surround it with like making sure that, here, I'll. Too fast. Yeah, too much thinking. We're going to do this. There we go. So I'm going to, if it hits this thing, I'm just going to remove it and I'm going to redirect it to the events. The problem is I don't know how to get to this yet. So this is where I'm going to, I want to go to this page, which is just the events.index. So I'm going to go right here. I'm going to add another table header. And I'm going to do something similar to this one. The problem is I don't really like that it has a link. I want a button. I'm going to change this. This is a button now. And this is going to say delete. The problem I have, a button, to make a button do something, I have to have like an on click. I don't have JavaScript here because normally I just create a JavaScript function and on click. But the other things that have happened here, when I do the delete has a delete button, but they don't call it a button. They call it an input of a submit. Yeah, so I think I need to do something similar to this in here. I don't have a bunch of forms. No, let's just do this. It's going to be a delete submit. But my form is going to be my post. That's fine. But let's do an action to it. Actually, yeah, I need to pass in. I need to somehow pass in a request parameter of the event ID. I think this is going to be faster if I just do it the way I did this other one and do it like the edit. I like this option better. Instead of request, it'd be a path variable. Because then I can copy what I did on the edit and do, how did I do it on the edit? So it'd be this like hidden, this hidden value on the index. And I called it event ID. And it's the event.id. Okay, so I have a hidden input on this form, but I do need to add the action. So just like the edit on the action, need to add the action, but it's going to be delete. Okay, so this way I don't have to do the, I'm going to go back. I changed my mind. This is legitimately how I code. And you can ask some of my coworkers. Sometimes I talk out loud too, so it's fine to do that. As long as you have cool coworkers. This goes back to the request parameter. Just like that one. So I'm just mimicking what I did here, right here. Am I forgetting anything else? Event ID. This is called event ID. I just want to make sure that this is also called event ID. All right. Let's see if this works. So I'm going to hit the debugger because I'm not as confident in this, and I'm going to put a breakpoint right on this thing right here. Oh, I like this much better than that edit. Looks like a button. And then I'm going to hit delete, and hopefully, yep. It said event ID of 1. And let's see if I play this, if it actually deletes it. It deletes it. So if I create another one, it says ID of 2. If I create another one, and then I can delete, and it deletes the right one. Like if I do that for delete, why don't I do that for, oh, I can't do that for edit per se, because edit needs to go to a form so I can edit it. But maybe I can at least make it a button. Index. But how would I make that a form with a button. I would do something like this. The action would be this thing. But it would be a get instead of a post. And then this would say edit. I'm just going to comment this line out because I know that thing works. I don't really need to keep the event ID because I'm not submitting it. I'm putting it as a parameter here. Why is that thing there? Events. Do I need that? Oh, ID equals event ID. We'll see how that works. They already had that there. Let me rerun this. Edit. Oh, there we go. Edit button. So forms with submits could be working as buttons. I thought there was one other thing I was going to do. Oh, the thing I didn't do that this whole thing was about. If you remember, what they did was on the create, they, instead of this request parameter with event name and event description, that's where they just did the at model attribute model event. No, not event here. Not event data. Events. And then did event here. I think that's right. Yeah, I didn't bring in whatever it's called. Or did I? No, I didn't. There's no bootstrap, so I can't really, I didn't bring it in. Okay, let's see if this thing works then. And because I am not very confident in this, I'm going to do the debugger. I'm going to set a breakpoint right on this create. So this is the new attribute that they said. Now, the question is, do you need to use this or does the other one work? And the answer is yes. You could use either one. So you can do the model attribute or you can do the request parameters and then just make it and then add it in. Either way works. Some people think this is a little cleaner. So we'll talk about the pros and cons. So whenever I create an event, I go back here and it says event is null. Event is null. I think this is due to that same thing of the names. So let's go back to create HTML. I think these just need to be name and description. I think. Oh, rerun. Okay, there we go. So remember, the naming of these things are super important. If you don't name them exactly what you need to, they won't pick up. And then if I let it play, there it is again. So that's good. Okay, so we changed this to a model attribute. Here's the pros and cons. Somebody said, you know, if I have an event here, if I add in my models, let's say that I don't care if they have a description. Oh, that's another thing we could talk about here in a second. Hold on. Lots of things we could talk about. Let's say that I just want to go ahead and generate another constructor, and I just need a name. If the description's not there, I'll just I'll just fill it in. So if the description's not there, well, here's what I'll do. Is it? I'm not call. What is? Or is it this? Might be this. Super is whenever it's. What did I just hit? I think I hit the insert thing, maybe. Yeah, I did. There we go. So if they don't give a description, I'll put in a description of no description given. So I like this. So let's do this. So I have two constructors. This will call this one. So then this one will pick up the ID and everything else. So I don't need to rewrite this stuff on the inside because this is going to call this up here. So let's all events, create event, error. So this is what somebody else was getting. Like sometimes you want two constructors, but it says here in the error, it says no primary or single unique constructor found for this class. No primary single constructor found for this class. So unfortunately, the way that we are doing this right now, says here I had the same error when I forgot the response body before the parameter. I don't think that's not this one. Because we have app model, so it's going to do the same thing. Yeah, you can't do this as of what we have learned right now. If somebody wants to go out and Google a way to do that, but you're absolutely right. When you use these certain controllers, like this is a very specific controller, and then you're using the at model attribute to do this, it's trying to bind your event to a typical event. And when it tries to bind your event to a typical event, it doesn't know what typical means. So it doesn't know which constructor to use. So with this, that is why I don't often see this model attribute. It's way more common for me to see this request parameter. It's more common for me to see this because it's easier to do this. Or I can do let's say that they don't give a description. I can do an if statement. If event description dot is empty. So if I do it with the request parameters, I can say, hey, if they don't have a description, just throw in the name, else throw in both. So I have more control over this. I'm not saying that if I'm writing something as fast as possible to get it out the door, am I going to use the model attribute? Probably. But then later on, I might need to change it. So I don't want to go into too much of this model with this exact constructor, because as soon as I do, in the next week, we are going to change this to be an app model. Is it an app model? It's not an app model. I can't even remember what the name is. I'll have to look it up. But when you have this, there's an annotation there that we're going to be using that kind of binds it. Either that or maybe I'm thinking about Lambach. If you look up Lambach, they have these like things. So instead of There's these fancy tools that if you just give these, you can have annotations that will create your constructor and all of your getters and setters for you. Just by using a couple annotations, it'll do all of that for you. Now, it won't show it in the code. That's the unique spot, is like people think, oh, it's generating it. It is generating it, but it's generating it when you build your project. It doesn't build the text. It builds it on the back. So there are tools that you'll hear all over the place. I actually do not recommend it because I've used it once and it's actually kind of made an issue with just one little situation that I ran into. I couldn't do what I needed to, so I actually had to get rid of that and type all my stuff in anyway. But there are things out there. Yeah, pretty much. So here's the pros and cons about what we call abstraction and encapsulation. So whenever we remove all of these lines of code, which they call boilerplate code, because you write the same thing every single time. You write your setters and getters, you write your constructors every single time. So it's called boilerplate code. Whenever you have to write that, they have created things that help you with those. But whenever you remove yourself from that layer, then you can't fine tune what you want. So it's just the pros and cons of doing that. You don't know how it's getting done. It's getting done, but if anything goes wrong, you don't know why or how. So there's pros and cons of each of those. What I do is I usually just go to the people that have been doing it a long time and asking them, okay, what things have been around for 10 years and I know they're going to work in another 10 years from now, and I'll use it. I think I've touched on everything. I think I have. Oh, one other random thing. In my opinion, when we talk about, do you see how the delete just says remove? I like this. This is what a true controller would do because it's calling something else that actually does the actions. It does not do the actions itself. If you go to the edit part right here, do you see how it's actually editing in this controller? So common practice is actually not to do this. Common practice is to take this and put it over here, and you would do a public static void like update. And then when you update, you need to know the ID and you need to know the event that the new event information. And then you would post most of that logic here. So you would do all of the action stuff right here in this, not in your controller. And in your controller, then you would just call the event data dot update with your event ID and your event. Why is it? What did I call it? Oh, I typed in both of them. Oh, so if I did it this way, which is fine, I would do name and description. I don't like that. Let's get really weird here for a second. Wondering if this would work. So you would do something like this where you get your event ID, you get your event. This would be all your information separately. Like it would bundle it all together. If we had more than just 2 attributes for event, this is where this comes in handy, because it's going to package all of those things together rather than everything individually. That would be the pro, because remember, there's pros and cons, there's trade-offs on how you do things. The pro of having this is if you have 12 different things in your event, you can grab all of them right here rather than having 12 different attributes that you call. And then you would update inside here. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. My only problem with this specific way is if I did it this way with this model attribute, this right here technically creates a new event. So my IDs will be weird because it'll actually increment my IDs. So this will actually create an event with a new ID. I don't know if I'll try to show that. We'll see what breaks, but then I'll be done. I'm just curious what will break. Oh, that's not good. Oh, event name is not present. I've already messed with so many things. I'm going to let you guys go with that. But I did want to bring up this concept of sometimes we remove things from the controller and put it somewhere else in either a service or in the data layer. So I would think about this a little bit as you do that. The only other thing to talk about potentially is the studio. You're going to continuously work on your spa day. And the main thing you're doing is you're going to add a user controller. You're going to add the view. So you're going to add the controller. You're going to add the view, and you're going to add the model. So your user should have this. This one's kind of like last time. I think this one's actually even more straightforward. So you're going to use that model attribute user and string verify. This is for your password. Yeah. So it's going to check to make sure that your user.password equals your verify, like your password. Fine. I wish I had this up and running and could show you, but I don't. So tell your IAs they need to show you what this looks like. Any other? I will look to see if that red button was Bootstrap. I don't know where I brought it in though, because I don't think. Oh, where is that at? I guess I did bring it in. It's right there in my fragments. That's why I didn't even look at my fragments. So what did you guys suggest? Button and then button info? My thing doesn't work right now anyway. Well, I'll mess around with that.